I've been at Blackpine Lodge for 8 months now. That makes me the longest surviving caretaker in 15 years. 17 people worked here before me. 12 quit within the first month. 3 vanished without a trace. 2 were found dead from hypothermia in the middle of summer. I know this because I found their files in the office desk. Yellowed newspaper clippings paperclipped to employment contracts that were never completed. My name is Jake Morrison. I'm 32 years old, and 8 months ago I was a paramedic in Albany. I was good at my job. I'd saved dozens of lives, worked hundreds of emergencies, seen things that would make most people vomit. But there's one call I couldn't save. A 7-year-old boy named Tommy Fisher. Car accident on the Northway. Internal bleeding. I did everything right, followed every protocol, but he died in my ambulance anyway. His mother's screams still wake me up at night. After Tommy, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't look at my ambulance without seeing his face. The department put me on administrative leave. My wife Sarah tried to be supportive, but 3 months of me sitting in our bedroom staring at walls was too much. She filed for divorce in April. I didn't fight it. She got the house in the settlement, which was fair since her parents helped with the down payment. I got the debt. $53,000 in medical bills from my therapy sessions, another $22,000 in legal fees, and a credit card maxed out at $18,000 that I'd used to pay for everything while I wasn't working. By June, I was sleeping in my truck in a Walmart parking lot in Saratoga Springs. That's when I saw the posting on a gas station bulletin board. Someone had printed it on actual paper like something from the 1970s. Winter caretaker needed. Blackpine Lodge, Northern Adirondacks. 6-month contract, October through March. $4,500 per month plus room and board. Solitude required. I called the number. A woman named Carol answered. She didn't ask about my qualifications or experience. She asked 2 questions. Can you handle being alone? Can you follow instructions exactly as given? I said yes to both. She told me to be at the lodge on September 28th for training with the outgoing caretaker. She gave me an address and hung up. The drive from Albany took 4 hours. I headed north on Interstate 87, watching the landscape transform from suburbs to farmland to forest. The GPS worked fine until I passed Tupper Lake, then the signal just died. The last thing it showed was a blank area marked Unknown Region. I had to use the handwritten directions Carol had mailed me. Turn right at mile marker 147. Follow unmarked road for 12 miles. Look for stone pillars with pine tree symbols. The roads got narrower as I drove deeper into the Adirondacks. The forest pressed in from both sides, old-growth pine and spruce so thick I couldn't see more than 20 feet into the trees. I passed abandoned logging camps, their equipment rusted and overgrown with moss. Trails branched off the main road, leading to places that didn't appear on any map. The temperature dropped 15 degrees even though it was August. I had to turn on my heater. The final 5 miles were on a dirt road that didn't look maintained. My truck bounced over ruts and rocks. I saw a warning sign nailed to a tree, private property, Blackpine Lodge, no trespassing. Someone had shot it several times. The bullet holes formed a pattern that might have been deliberate. Then the lodge appeared. It was massive. 3 stories of dark timber and stone, built into the side of a hill overlooking a lake so still it looked like black glass. The architecture was 1920s, all exposed beams and steep roofs designed to shed heavy snow. I later learned it was built by the Blackpine family, industrialists from New York City who made their fortune in steel. They used it as a summer estate until 1950, when they converted it to a hunting lodge. It had been semi-operational for decades, opening sporadically for wealthy guests, but mostly it sat empty. I parked next to a Ford pickup truck that was already running. A man stood on the lodge's front porch, 2 duffel bags at his feet. He was maybe mid-40s, but he looked 20 years older, deep circles under his eyes, cheeks sunken. He'd lost significant weight recently. I could tell by how his clothes hung on his frame. His hands shook as he lit a cigarette. I got out of my truck. "Marcus." He nodded, took a long drag. "You're Jake." "Yeah, Carol said you trained me for 3 days. Marcus laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. I'll give you 2 hours, that's all I can manage. The posting said 3 days of training. The posting says a lot of things. He dropped his cigarette and crushed it under his boot. Look, I'm sorry. I know you drove a long way, but I need to be past the tree line before dark. You'll understand why soon enough. He was already moving toward his truck. I followed him. Wait, I need to know how to run this place. The heating system, the generator, the water. Generators in the shed behind the lodge. Diesel. You've got 200-gallon tank, should last the winter if you're careful. Water comes from the well, pumps in the basement. There's a backup hand pump if the power fails. Heats from the fireplaces and the wood stove in the kitchen. You'll need to chop a lot of wood. He opened his truck door. I grabbed his arm. He flinched like I'd burned him. That's not enough information, I said. I need to know maintenance schedules, emergency procedures, how to contact you if something breaks down. Marcus looked at my hand on his arm, then at my face. His eyes were red-rimmed and wet. You don't contact me. You don't contact anyone except Carol, and only during the scheduled radio check at noon. And if something breaks down, you fix it yourself or you leave. Those are your options. What happened here? Why are you so scared? He pulled his arm free, reached into his truck and grabbed a leather-bound journal from the passenger seat, thrust it at me. This is more important than anything else I could tell you. Read it tonight. Follow every single rule. Don't skip any. Don't modify them. Don't try to find loopholes. Just follow them exactly. I took the journal. It was old, the leather cracked and stained. What kind of rules? The kind that keep you alive. He climbed into his truck. I had a family, Jake, a wife and 2 daughters. I haven't seen them in 5 months because I'm terrified of bringing something back with me. I'm going to a motel in Syracuse for 2 weeks. Going to sit in a room with the lights on and the TV loud just to remember what normal feels like. Then maybe I'll go home. He started to close his door. I held it open. You're not making sense. Bringing what back? Marcus rolled up his sleeves. His forearms were covered in scratches. Some were old scars, white and raised. Others were fresh, still scabbed over. I followed the rules. That's why I'm still alive. The ones who didn't, well, just read the journal, all the way through, tonight. He yanked the door shut and reversed so fast he almost hit my truck. I watched his taillights disappear down the dirt road, dust rising in his wake. Then I was alone. The only sound was wind moving through the pines and water lapping at the lakeshore. The sun was starting to set. The temperature was dropping fast. I picked up one of my bags and walked toward the lodge. The front door was unlocked. Inside was dark and smelled like wood smoke and old paper. I found a light switch. Overhead fixtures came on, revealing a great hall that looked like something from a different era. Mounted animal heads on the walls. Deer, elk, a black bear with its mouth open in a permanent roar. Antique furniture arranged around a massive stone fireplace. Bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. A grandfather clock in the corner, its hands stopped at 3:47. I explored the first floor. The great hall connected to a dining room with a table that could seat 20. The kitchen was industrial-sized, with a wood-burning stove and a modern refrigerator that hummed quietly. A library filled with books about Adirondack history, hunting, forestry. A study with a desk covered in paperwork. An office with filing cabinets and a radio set. Everything was dusty but functional, maintained but not lived in. And everywhere I looked, I found small details that made my skin crawl. There were scratches on the inside of the front door. Deep gouges in the wood like someone had clawed at it desperately. Every window had a thin line of salt on the sill. The salt looked fresh, recently replaced. In the corners of rooms, hidden behind furniture, I found religious symbols. Crucifixes, dream catchers, a Star of David, even some symbols I didn't recognize. Like someone had tried every form of protection they could think of. In the library, I found a photo album. It was labeled Lodge Caretakers. I opened it. The first photo was from 1967, a smiling man in his 30s standing on the front porch, Robert Chen. Written below his name was June 1967 to November 1967. The next page showed a different person, Margaret Voss. November 1967 to December 1967. Just 1 month. I flipped through the album. Some caretakers lasted weeks, some months. A few made it a whole winter season, but several photos had the faces scratched out, not torn or removed, scratched, like someone had taken a knife and carved away the image. I closed the album and checked my watch. 6:15. The sun would set in about 20 minutes. I should unload my truck, but Marcus's fear was contagious. I decided to read the journal first. I settled into an armchair near the fireplace and opened the leather cover. The first page was written in neat handwriting. The ink faded to brown. My name is Robert Chen. I am the first official caretaker of Blackpine Lodge. If you are reading this, I am either gone or dead. What follows are rules you must obey to survive. I discovered these through trial and error. Others were not so fortunate. Follow them exactly. Your life depends on it. Below that was a list. Rule 1. Never go outside between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., no matter what you hear. Rule 2. If you hear someone calling your name from the forest, count to 30 before responding. If they call again with the exact same inflection, do not answer. Rule 3. Keep the main hall fireplace burning from sunset to sunrise, October through April. If it goes out, relight it immediately and do not look at the windows until flames are established. Rule 4. The third-floor hallway has 12 doors. Only 11 are real. Never try to determine which one is false. Rule 5. If you wake at exactly 3:47 a.m., stay in bed with eyes closed until you hear the grandfather clock chime 4 times. Rule 6. This rule had been heavily crossed out. Someone had scribbled over it with black ink until it was completely illegible. In the margin was a note in different handwriting. I destroyed this rule trying to save it. My mistake. Protect what remains. Rule 7. If you find fresh snow inside the lodge during summer, leave the building immediately and do not return for 6 hours. I stared at the list. This had to be a joke, some kind of hazing ritual for new caretakers. Rural Adirondack humor, but Marcus hadn't been joking. His terror was real. I turned the page. The journal contained entries from different people, different years. The handwriting changed, but the content was consistent. Observations, warnings, experiences. October 3, 1967. Robert Chen. Rule 1 exists because of what happened to David. David was my assistant hired to help with maintenance. On his third night, he heard a woman screaming outside. He thought someone was hurt. I tried to stop him, but he insisted. He was a good man, wanted to help. We found him 3 days later, 2 miles into the forest. He was dead. Hypothermia, the coroner said, but David's face, the expression was wrong. Like he'd died seeing something that broke his mind. March 12, 1974. Margaret Voss. Rule 5 is absolute. Marie didn't follow it. She thought she could stay in the Great Hall and tend the fire. At 3:47 a.m. something happened. I don't know what. I was in bed with my eyes closed following the rule, but Marie didn't come to breakfast. I found her in the Great Hall at sunrise. She was standing in the corner facing the wall. She wouldn't respond to her name, wouldn't move. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't there anymore. The ambulance took her to the hospital in Lake Placid. The doctors said catatonic state, cause unknown. She never spoke again. Sometimes I see her in the mirrors. November 8, 1993. Thomas Werner. Rule 3 works because fire creates a barrier. I learned this after I let the fire die. It was just for a few minutes while I went to get more wood. When I came back, there were faces at every window, dozens of them pressing against the glass. They weren't human. The proportions were wrong, too many fingers on their hands, eyes that reflected the moonlight like an animal's. They watched me relight the fire. The moment the flames caught, they vanished. January 4, 2012. Patricia Hayes, I'm leaving this journal for whoever comes next. I can't stay anymore. It's been using my son's voice. My son died 6 years ago, leukemia. He was 9. The thing outside knows exactly how he sounded when he was scared, when he was in pain, when he called for me in the hospital. Last night it called for me for 4 hours. Mommy, please. Mommy, I'm scared. Mommy, help me. I know it's not him. I know, but I can't. I can't listen to his voice begging me and not respond. I'm leaving tomorrow. I lasted 3 months. I'm sorry. The most recent entry was from Marcus. Day 147. Marcus Riley. Longest I've ever stayed anywhere, my record. It used my daughter's voice last night, Emma. She's 12. The thing knew her exactly. How she sounds when she's happy, when she's sad. It told me things only Emma would know. Secret things she told me, but I remembered rule 2. I counted. When it called again, same inflection, same tone, like a recording, I didn't answer. It screamed for 6 hours after that. Not Emma's voice anymore. Something else. Something that doesn't have vocal cords. I need to leave soon. Not because I'm afraid I'll die, because I'm afraid I'll listen. I'm afraid one night I'll hear Emma and I'll forget it's not real and I'll open the door. And then I'll never see the real Emma again. To whoever reads this, follow the rules, all of them. Don't try to be smart. Don't try to find explanations. Don't try to communicate with them. Just follow the rules and survive. That's all you can do. I closed the journal and sat in the silent lodge. Outside, the sun had set. The forest was dark. My hands were shaking. This was insane. These were clearly the writings of people who'd been isolated too long, who'd let the solitude get to them. Auditory hallucinations, paranoid delusions, common symptoms of extreme isolation. I was a paramedic. I knew psychology. This was textbook. But then I remembered Marcus's arms. Those scratches were real. I got up and walked to the window, looked out at the dark forest. Nothing moved. No lights, no sounds, just darkness and trees. My phone buzzed, text from Carol, radio check tomorrow at noon. Channel 7, don't miss it. I texted back, got any more info on the rules? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then follow them exactly. That's all I can tell you. Why? No response. I went to my truck and brought in the rest of my supplies. Clothes, food, books, my laptop, though there was no internet this far out. I found the bedroom on the 2nd floor. It was clean, the bed made with fresh sheets. Someone had left the previous caretaker's belongings in the closet. Flannel shirts, work boots, a hunting jacket. There were scratch marks on the closet door's interior. I unpacked, then went back downstairs. The great hall was cold. I should probably start a fire like Rule 3 said. Just to stay warm, I told myself. Not because I believed in the rules. I found firewood stacked neatly in a bin beside the fireplace, kindling and newspapers in a basket. I built a fire the way my grandfather taught me, back when we used to camp in the Catskills. Newspaper base, kindling teepee, larger logs on top. I lit it and watched the flames catch. The warmth felt good. The crackling sound was comforting. I settled back into the armchair with the journal and read more entries, accounts of strange sounds, figures seen in peripheral vision, doors opening on their own, all of it attributed to whatever was out in the forest. At 9:45 p.m., I checked my watch and made sure the front door was locked, just to be safe. I wasn't following Rule 1 because I believed in it. I was being cautious. There were real dangers in the Adirondacks. Bears, wolves, the occasional mountain lion. Locking your door at night in the wilderness was just common sense. 10 p.m. came and went. Nothing happened. I felt foolish for being nervous. I fed another log to the fire and opened one of my books. At 11:34 p.m., someone knocked on the front door. 3 measured knocks, polite, patient. I froze, the book slid off my lap. The knocking came again, same rhythm, same force. Then a voice, "Hello, is anyone there? I need help." It was a man's voice, middle-aged, rough from cold, genuinely distressed. "My car broke down on the service road," the voice continued. "I've been walking for over an hour. Please, I can see your lights. I know you're in there." I stood up. My paramedic training kicked in immediately. Someone was in trouble. Exposure was deadly. It was probably 40 degrees outside. If this person had been walking for over an hour, they could be hypothermic. I walked toward the door. My hand reached for the lock. Then I remembered Marcus's face, the terror in his eyes. I stopped. "Stay warm. I'll come out at sunrise with supplies." Silence then. "I'll die by then, please. I can hear you right there. Why won't you help me?" My hand hovered over the lock. Every instinct I had screamed to help this person. I was a paramedic. Saving lives was what I did. It was who I was. But I thought about David, found 3 days later, wrong expression on his face. "I can't open the door," I said. "It's not safe. But if you stay near the building, you'll be sheltered from the wind. I have blankets. I can pass them through a window." "Just open the door," the voice said, louder now, more insistent. "Stop being ridiculous and open the door." I stepped back. Something about the tone had changed. Less desperate, more demanding. "Please," the voice said again. "I need help. My wife is in the car. She's hurt. She needs a paramedic." My blood went cold. I'd never told anyone I was a paramedic. Not Carol, not Marcus. I'd left that part out of everything. "How do you know I'm a paramedic?" No answer. "Who are you?" The voice didn't respond to my question. Instead, it just repeated, "Please, I need help. Please, I need help." Same words, same inflection, exactly identical, like it was playing a recording. "Please, I need help. Please, I need help. Please, I need help." Over and over, no variation, no change in pitch or emphasis. Mechanical. I backed away from the door until I hit the wall. The voice continued for 27 minutes. I counted every second. Then, at exactly midnight, it stopped. Mid-word, cut off like someone had hit a switch. Silence. I waited, listening, my heart hammering. Nothing. At 1 a.m., I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. The porch was empty. I could see my truck, the forest beyond, nothing else. At sunrise, I unlocked the door and checked outside. No footprints in the dirt despite the voice claiming to have stood there for over an hour. I walked to the service road. No broken down car. No tire tracks. No evidence anyone had been here. But on the front door at chest height was a handprint. It was larger than mine. The fingers were too long, and there were 6 of them. I went back inside and vomited in the kitchen sink. The rules were real. I spent the next week preparing. I reinforced every door with additional locks. I checked the salt lines on the windowsills daily and refreshed them when they got low. I chopped enough firewood to last through winter and stacked it in multiple locations so I'd never have to go far to feed the fire. I memorized the rules until I could recite them backwards. I also studied the journal intensively. I found patterns in the entries. Activity increased during the new moon. It seemed stronger from October through March, weakest in summer. There were multiple entities, not just one. They learned and adapted. If something didn't work one night, they'd try a different approach the next. Carol radioed at noon each day. The conversations were brief. "Blackpine Lodge, this is base. Radio check." "Base, this is Blackpine. All systems normal. Any issues to report?" "Negative." "Understood, stay safe. Base out." On the 3rd day, I tried to get more information. "Carol, what exactly is out here?" Long pause. "Different people see different things. Just follow the rules." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have. I've never been to the lodge. I work from an office in Albany. I just coordinate logistics." Then who knows the real story? The people who wrote in that journal, and most of them are dead or won't talk about it. There's a reason we have trouble keeping caretakers, Jake. Why does anyone maintain this place? Why not just abandon it? Another pause. There are things in the world that need to be contained. Monitored. This is one of them. The lodge is important. Your job is important, even if you don't understand why. She ended the transmission before I could ask more questions. Day 12. I was chopping firewood at the forest edge. It was 4 p.m., still plenty of daylight. The air was crisp and the physical work felt good. I'd fallen into a routine. Mornings for maintenance, afternoons for chores, evenings for reading and fire tending. I was mid-swing when I heard my name. Jake. I froze. The axe stopped halfway through the log. The voice came from the trees. It sounded exactly like Sarah, my ex-wife. Every hair on my body stood up. I remembered Rule 2, count to 30 before responding. I started counting, 1, 2, 3. Jake, please. 4, 5, 6. I know you're there, I can see you. 7, 8, 9. Her voice was perfect, the slight rasp she got when she was tired, the way she pronounced my name with a soft J. 10, 11, 12. I'm sorry about everything. I was wrong, can we talk? 13, 14, 15. I wanted to answer so badly. Even after the divorce, even after everything, part of me still loved her. Hearing her voice made my chest ache. 16, 17, 18. Jake. 19, 20, 21. I was at 28 when I heard it again. Jake. Exact same tone, exact same pitch, identical inflection, like someone had pressed replay. I didn't answer. I dropped the axe and walked quickly toward the lodge, not running. The journal said never run, but moving with purpose. The voice followed me. Jake, Jake, Jake. Same recording, over and over. Then it changed. It became my mother's voice. She died 5 years ago from lung cancer. Jakey, honey, it's Mom, I need you. She used to call me Jakey when I was little. Nobody else ever called me that. It was our thing. I kept walking. I was 15 feet from the lodge entrance. Jakey, please, I'm scared. 10 feet. Why won't you help me, honey? I'm your mother. 5 feet. The voice cycled through people I loved. My father, who died when I was in college. My best friend Marcus from high school, who'd overdosed sophomore year. Even Tommy Fisher, the boy who died in my ambulance. Mr. Jake, I'm cold. Why didn't you save me? I reached the door, grabbed the handle, yanked it open, stepped inside and slammed it shut, locked it. The voices continued outside, circling the building. Different people, different voices, but all repeating the same phrases in the same tones. Recordings, copies, not real. It went on for 6 hours. Then, exactly at sunset, it stopped. I checked outside the next morning. No footprints, no evidence, just silence and trees. October 15th arrived. The temperature dropped hard, 28 degrees, first frost of the season. I'd been maintaining the fire religiously every night since that first encounter. I'd wake every few hours to add logs, making sure it never went out. That night, I made a mistake. I'd been reading in bed some old mystery novel from the library. I fell asleep with the light on. No alarm set. I woke at 2:17 a.m. to a smell, smoke dying. I ran downstairs to the great hall. The fire had burned down to embers, glowing red but no flames. The room was getting cold. I could see my breath. Panic hit me. I remembered Rule 3. If it goes out, relight it immediately. Do not look at the windows. I crouched by the fireplace and grabbed kindling from the basket. My hands shook. I struck a match. It flared bright, then went out. My hands were shaking too hard. Behind me, I heard something. A soft sound like fingernails on glass. Don't look at the windows. I struck another match. This one held. I touched it to newspaper, watched the paper catch. Added kindling carefully, building it up. The fingernail sound got louder, scratching on glass. Multiple sources, multiple windows. The kindling caught, small flames but growing. I added larger sticks than a split log. I heard breathing. slow and steady, the condensation of breath hitting cold glass, but there were dozens of sources all around the room. My hands trembled as I arranged the logs. The fire was building but not established yet, still fragile. The scratching intensified. I heard glass creaking under pressure. Something was pressing hard against the windows. The fire caught the larger log. Flames spread, growing stronger. Heat began radiating. The moment the fire established itself, burning steady and strong, all the sounds stopped. Instant silence. I waited 30 seconds. Then I looked at the windows. Nothing there, empty darkness beyond the glass. But the windows were covered in condensation, and in the condensation were handprints, dozens of them, different sizes. Some looked human, others didn't. Some had too many fingers, some had too few. Some were shaped wrong with fingers that were too long or joints that bent the wrong way. I stared at those handprints until sunrise. Then I went outside with a camera and photographed them before they faded. I needed evidence, proof I wasn't losing my mind. The photos came out blank, just windows, no condensation, no handprints. But I'd seen them, I knew I had. I started investigating the lodge's history. The library had old newspapers stored in boxes in the basement. I spent my afternoons reading through them, piecing together the story. August 1952. Tragedy at Blackpine Lodge. 7 men arrived for a weekend hunting trip. Only 2 returned. They claimed something in the forest had taken the others. The local sheriff organized a search party. 40 volunteers combed the woods for 2 weeks. They found one body, Michael Reeves, age 34, dead from exposure. No sign of the other 4 men. The 2 survivors were questioned extensively. Their stories were consistent but impossible. They said they'd been hunted, stalked by things that looked like people but weren't, things that called their names in familiar voices. The men were eventually declared legally insane and committed to psychiatric facilities. 1974. The Blackpine family abandoned the property. Their 9-year-old daughter Emily vanished. She was last seen playing near the tree line at dusk. Her father organized a massive search. Again, 40 people. Again, nothing found. Emily's father claimed he could hear her calling from the forest every night. He said she was crying for him to come get her. 3 months later, he hanged himself in the 3rd-floor hallway. The family never returned. The property was sold to a management company that rented it out sporadically. I found records of every caretaker. The pattern was consistent: high turnover, unexplained incidents, people leaving abruptly. Several deaths ruled as accidents or natural causes, but the circumstances were always strange. Hypothermia in summer, drowning in a lake that was only 4 feet deep, heart attacks in healthy young people. The lodge had a history, a long, dark history. I kept searching and found something else, a hidden room behind the library bookshelf. The shelf was actually a door, held closed by a magnetic latch. I discovered it by accident when I was dusting and the latch released. The room was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet. It was filled with research materials, maps of the property with areas circled in red ink, photographs of the forest, some showing blurry figures in the background, others showing strange lights, shadows that fell the wrong direction. There were audio cassette tapes labeled with dates. I found an old tape player and listened to them. The recordings were chilling, voices calling names, children crying, but something was wrong with all of them. The pitch was slightly off, the cadence unnatural, like something mimicking human speech but not quite getting it right. One tape was labeled Final Recording. David M. I played it. A man's voice shaking. My name is David Martinez. I've been caretaker here for 11 months. Longest anyone's lasted in 20 years. I need to explain something before I do what I'm about to do. Rule 6 is the most important one. It says never attempt to communicate with them. Never ask what they want. Never try to understand. I broke that rule. 3 days ago, I tried to communicate. I thought if I understood what they were, I could find a way to coexist, to make peace. I was wrong. A long pause, breathing. They answered me. They told me what they want, and now I can't unknow it, I can't unhear it. The knowledge is eating me from the inside. I tried to write it down to warn others, but I couldn't. The words wouldn't form, so I'm destroying Rule 6, making it illegible, because knowing is worse than not knowing. Understanding is worse than mystery. Another pause. If you're listening to this, please, don't make my mistake. Don't try to communicate. Don't seek answers. Just follow the rules and survive. Some doors should stay closed. The recording ended. I found David's final journal entry, written after he destroyed Rule 6. My mistake. If anyone reads this, protect Rule 6 at all costs. What's hidden there must stay hidden. I tried everything to read what was under the crossed-out text. I held it up to light, used water to make the ink run. Nothing worked. Whatever Rule 6 said, it was gone forever. I called Marcus. I'd found his number in the office desk. It rang 6 times before he answered. Hello. Marcus, it's Jake, from Blackpine Lodge. Silence, then. You're still alive, that's good. I need to ask you about Rule 6. No. Please, I found David's recordings. He said it was the most important rule. What did it say? I don't know. It was already destroyed when I got there. But you crossed it out more, made it more illegible. Why? Long pause, I heard him breathing. Because I was stupid. Because I thought if I could understand what they were, I could protect myself better, so I tried to restore it. Used chemicals, special lights, everything I could think of. And I succeeded. Partially. I read 3 words before I realized David was right. I immediately destroyed it again, made it completely unreadable. What were the 3 words? I can't tell you. Marcus, please. You don't understand, his voice rose. The knowing changes you. Those 3 words, they're in my head every day, every hour. I can't get them out. They color everything I see, everything I think. I wake up at night and they're the first thing I remember. I won't do that to you. Then just tell me this. Was David right? Is it better not to know? Yes, Marcus said quietly. God, yes. Don't dig, Jake. Don't investigate. Just follow the rules and survive. That's all we can do. That's all we've ever been able to do. He hung up. I put the phone down and sat in the hidden room surrounded by David's research. All these attempts to understand. All this desperate seeking of answers. And it had driven David to destroy his own findings. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe some questions shouldn't be answered. November 3rd was my mother's birthday. She would have been 62. I spent the day remembering her. The good times before the cancer. How she used to make blueberry pancakes on Sunday mornings. How she'd sing while doing dishes, old songs from the 1980s. How she held my hand when my father died. I went to bed early, exhausted from emotion. I fell asleep thinking about her. At 11:23 p.m., I woke to a voice at the front door. Jakey, it's Mom. I sat up in bed. My whole body went rigid. Jakey, honey, I know you're in there. It was her voice. Exactly her voice. The slight New York accent she never quite lost despite living upstate for 30 years. The way she softened consonants. I got out of bed and walked to the bedroom door, stopped there, listening. Remember when you were 7 and fell off your bike, scraped your knee so bad, I kissed it and said pain makes us stronger. Remember. I did remember. That exact moment. That exact phrase. I'd scraped my knee badly enough to need stitches. Mom had driven me to the hospital, and while we waited, she'd held my hand and said pain makes us stronger. I'm so proud of you, honey, the voice continued. Even after everything with Sarah, even after that little boy died, you're still fighting, you're still trying. That's all I ever wanted for you. Tears ran down my face. Nobody knew about Tommy except my therapist and Sarah. I'd never told anyone else. How could this thing know? Open the door, Jakey. Let me give you a hug like I used to. You need it, I can tell. I walked down the stairs. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted to see her again, wanted to feel her arms around me one more time. My hand touched the doorknob. "That's it, honey, open up, Mom's here." I slid down to the floor, back against the door, sobbing. "You're not her. You're not real." "I'm real, Jakey. I'm right here. I came back for you because I love you, because I never wanted to leave you alone." She died. I watched her die. I held her hand when she went. "You let me die alone in that hospital." I froze. "You were on shift," the voice continued, "saving strangers while your mother took her last breath alone. You got there 20 minutes too late, 20 minutes. I waited for you, called for you, but you weren't there." That was true. That guilt had haunted me for 5 years. I'd been in an ambulance with a cardiac patient, critical transport. I couldn't leave. By the time I got to the hospital, Mom was gone. "You failed me," the voice said. "Just like you failed that child, just like you failed Sarah. You fail everyone who needs you." "Stop. You're a failure, Jake. A coward who runs away. You couldn't handle being a paramedic, so you ran to the woods. You couldn't handle your marriage, so you let Sarah leave. You couldn't even hold your mother's hand while she died." I screamed. "You're not her. She would never say these things." The voice changed, dropped the loving tone, became cold and flat. "You're right, I'm not her, but I know her. I know everything about her. Every memory you have, every word she spoke, every moment you shared, I know it all, and I can use it all." Then it laughed. The sound wasn't human. It had too many tones, too many frequencies, like multiple voices layered on top of each other. I covered my ears, but I could still hear it. The laugh went on, echoing through the door, through the walls, through my skull. It stopped abruptly at 3:47 a.m. The grandfather clock chimed once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Silence. I stayed on the floor until sunrise. Then I checked outside. No footprints, no evidence, but I could still hear that laugh in my head. December 21st, winter solstice, the longest night of the year. I knew something was coming. The journal entries all mentioned solstice as particularly dangerous. Sunset at 4:32 p.m. Sunrise not until 7:16 a.m. Almost 15 hours of darkness. I prepared extensively, chopped extra firewood and stacked it inside close to the fireplace, checked every lock 3 times, refreshed all the salt lines, set up multiple flashlights with fresh batteries, made sure the radio was fully charged. I started the fire at 4 p.m. before sunset, fed it well, building it high, settled into my armchair with the journal and waited. Sunset came, the forest went dark, the temperature dropped to -15 degrees, the coldest night yet. At first nothing happened. 8 p.m. passed quietly, 9 p.m. the same. I started to relax slightly. Then the power went out. The lights died instantly. Every electrical hum in the building ceased. Only the firelight remained, casting dancing shadows on the walls. I grabbed a flashlight and headed to the basement. The generator had stopped. I checked the fuel tank. Full. I checked the connections. Everything looked fine. I tried to restart it. Nothing. It was dead. I went back upstairs. The fire was still burning strong. That was all that mattered. At 9 p.m. exactly, the pounding started. Every door, every window, simultaneously, tremendous force like someone taking a battering ram to each entrance point. The entire building shook. Pictures fell off walls. Books tumbled from shelves. I stayed by the fire, feeding it logs, keeping it strong. The pounding continued, rhythmic, relentless. The front door cracked. I could hear wood splintering, but it held. Something heavy hit the roof. Then another impact, and another. Multiple things moving up there, running back and forth. I heard scratching, metal scraping on metal. They were on the roof. The pounding at the door stopped abruptly, replaced by voices. Dozens of voices, hundreds maybe, all calling my name. Some I recognized, most I didn't. They came from every direction, some begging, some angry, some crying. Jake, please help me. Jake, why did you let me die? Jake, I'm so cold. Jake, I forgive you. Jake, I hate you. Jake, come outside. Jake, we just want to talk. The voices overlapped, creating a wall of sound. I couldn't pick out individual words anymore. Just my name over and over in 100 different tones. I covered my ears, but it didn't help. The voices weren't just outside. They seemed to come from inside the walls, from the floorboards, from the air itself. Then at midnight, everything stopped. Complete silence. I waited, listening. The fire crackled. That was the only sound. 5 minutes of silence, then a new voice, young, female, clear. Mr. Jake, are you in there? I didn't recognize this voice. It was a child, maybe 8 or 9 years old. I'm cold, please let me in. I stayed silent. This was a trick, had to be. My name is Emily. Emily Blackpine, this is my house, did you know that? Emily, the girl who disappeared in 1974. I'd read about her. I've been waiting out here for so long, the voice said. It's dark and I'm scared. I just want to go home. The voice moved from window to window. I could see small handprints appearing on the glass, child-sized. They left marks in the frost. Please, mister, I'll be good, I promise. I just want to be warm. The voice was heartbreaking. Every instinct I had screamed to help this child, to open the door and bring her inside. But I knew it wasn't really Emily. It was using her voice, her memory, just like it had used my mother's. The child's voice cried for 2 hours, sobbing, begging, promising to be good, asking why nobody would help her. Then at 2:47 a.m. all the voices returned, every single one from before. They screamed my name in unison, a chorus of the dead, the lost, the missing. The windows rattled in their frames. Cracks appeared in the glass, but it didn't break. The door shook on its hinges. The whole building groaned like it was being torn apart. And the fire flickered. I panicked, threw on more logs, too many. The fire blazed high, almost dangerous, but it held, it didn't go out. The assault continued. I lost track of time. I might have been there for minutes or hours. The noise was endless, the shaking constant. I curled up on the floor next to the fireplace, hands over my ears, eyes closed, reciting anything I could remember, paramedic protocols, the alphabet backwards, song lyrics, anything to drown out the voices. My watch alarm went off, 3:47 a.m. Rule 5, stay in bed with eyes closed, wait for the clock to chime. But I wasn't in bed, I was in the great hall. The voices stopped, the pounding stopped, everything went silent. Then I heard footsteps, inside the lodge, in the hallway that led to the great hall. Slow, measured steps, coming closer. I remembered the journal entry. Marie didn't follow Rule 5, she's still in the lodge. Something was inside with me. I wanted to run to my bedroom, but I knew I wouldn't make it. The footsteps were too close. I did the only thing I could think of. I lay down on the floor right there next to the fire. I closed my eyes, pressed them shut as tight as I could. The footsteps entered the great hall. They walked around the room, circling. I could hear them clearly, measured, patient. They stopped right next to me. I felt weight on the floor beside me. Something had sat down, right there. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. The touch was cold, so cold it burned through my shirt. A voice whispered directly in my ear, my mother's voice again. Jakey, open your eyes. The hand shook my shoulder gently. Look at me, honey, I miss you so much. The hand gripped tighter, painful now, fingernails digging into my skin. Open your eyes. I started counting, waiting for the clock. Each second felt like an hour. The hand was hurting me badly now. I could feel blood where the nails broke skin. Open your eyes. The grandfather clock chimed. 1. The hand squeezed harder. 2. I could feel bones grinding together in my shoulder. 3. I bit my tongue to keep from screaming. 4. The hand released, the weight beside me lifted. Footsteps walked away, faded into nothing. I kept my eyes closed until 6 a.m., until I saw pale light through my eyelids. Then I opened them. The great hall was empty. The fire had burned down to embers, but it hadn't gone out. The doors were intact, the windows unbroken. But on my shoulder was a bruise in the shape of a hand with 6 fingers. I went to the bathroom and peeled off my shirt. The bruise was massive, purple and black. The fingernail marks had broken skin, 4 crescents of dried blood. I bandaged it and put on a clean shirt. Then I sat in the great hall and watched the sunrise through the windows. I'd survived the longest night. I'd followed the rules and I'd survived. But I was changed. I could feel it. The world looked different now. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence more complete. I knew things existed that most people never imagined, and I knew I'd have to live with that knowledge for the rest of my life. I understood now what the lodge really was. It wasn't just a building. It was a threshold, a place where the barrier between our world and somewhere else had worn thin. The entities on the other side couldn't cross completely, but they could reach through. They could call out, they could mimic, they could almost touch. The rules weren't superstition. They were protocols developed through trial and error. Each rule represented someone who died or disappeared. Each warning was written in blood. Rule 1. David had gone outside at night, found dead 3 days later. Rule 2. Someone had answered the voices, never seen again. Rule 3. The fire created a barrier. Without it, they could press closer. Rule 4. The false door on the 3rd floor. I still didn't understand that one. I deliberately not investigated. Some rules you followed without needing to know why. Rule 5. Marie had been awake at 3:47. Now she was still here, trapped or transformed. I didn't want to know which. Rule 6. The forbidden knowledge. Whatever it said had driven David to destroy it. Rule 7. I hadn't experienced that one yet. Hopefully I never would. I spent the next weeks in a kind of daze. I maintained the lodge, followed the rules, survived, but I was different. I didn't sleep well. When I did sleep, I dreamed of hands with too many fingers reaching for me. Carol noticed during a radio check. "You sound tired, Jake." "I'm fine." "The solstice was hard, wasn't it?" "How did you know?" "It's always hard. That's why we lose so many caretakers in December and January. The long nights, the intensity. Are you thinking of leaving?" I considered it. I could leave. My contract had an early termination clause. I could be back in Albany in 5 hours. But then what? Go back to my empty apartment, my failed career, my broken life. Here at least I had a purpose. "I'm staying," I said. "Why?" I thought about Tupper Lake, the small town 12 miles away, population of 3,000, families, children, people living normal lives unaware of what existed in these woods. "Because someone has to maintain the barrier," I said. "If the lodge is abandoned, if the rules aren't followed, what happens? Do they break through? Do they spread?" Carol was quiet for a long time. "I don't know, nobody does, but we're not willing to find out." "Then I'm staying. Someone has to be here." "Thank you, Jake." I spent my remaining time improving the system. I rewrote the rules more clearly, adding specific details I'd learned. I created a comprehensive guide with explanations that didn't reveal too much, but helped new caretakers understand the importance. I tried to reconstruct Rule 6 from David's notes. I found fragments, hints, but every time I got close to understanding, I'd feel this pressure in my head, this wrongness, like my mind was trying to protect itself. I'd get headaches so severe I'd vomit. Eventually, I stopped trying. Instead, I wrote my own version based on what I knew. Rule 6, never attempt to communicate with them. Never ask what they want. Never seek to understand their nature. Acknowledge their existence only by following the protocols. Some knowledge is dangerous. Some doors must stay closed. I added a new rule from my experience. Rule 8. If you must be outside your bedroom at 3:47 a.m., lie down wherever you are, close your eyes and wait for 4 chimes. Do not open your eyes regardless of what you feel or hear. I made maps of the property, marking areas of high activity. I documented seasonal patterns. I recorded everything in meticulous detail so the next caretaker would be better prepared than I was. March arrived. The snow began to melt. The days grew longer. The nights became less active. Whatever was out there seemed to quiet down as spring approached. On March 15th, Carol called on the radio. "Jake, I wanted to give you advance notice. Your replacement is arriving tomorrow. If you'd like to renew your contract, we can discuss that, but you're free to leave if you want." I'd been thinking about this for weeks. Part of me wanted to leave, to return to civilization, to sleep without checking locks, to not flinch every time I heard a noise. But another part of me knew I couldn't leave, not completely. "I'm not renewing," I said, "but I'm not going far either." "What do you mean?" "I'm going to stay in the area, Tupper Lake maybe. That way I'm close if the new caretaker needs help, if they have questions." "That's very dedicated of you." "It's necessary. This place, what's here, it needs to be taken seriously. I want to be available." The next day, a truck pulled up the drive. A young man got out, mid-20s, lean and nervous. He had the look of someone running from something. I recognized that look. I'd had it 8 months ago. His name was Chris, from Syracuse. He'd lost his job, his girlfriend had left him, and he needed to get away from the city. I met him on the porch, handed him the journal. "Read this tonight, follow every rule." He laughed, opened the journal and skimmed the first page. "Seriously, is this some kind of joke, like a hazing thing for new employees?" I looked at him, really looked at him, saw myself in his skepticism, his rational mindset, his certainty that the world made sense. "I was like you," I said. 8 months ago, I thought these rules were ridiculous. I almost died because of that attitude." "Come on, man. You're telling me you believe in ghosts or whatever." I rolled up my sleeve, showed him the scar on my shoulder, 6 crescent-shaped marks where fingernails had dug in, and below them the faded bruise in the shape of a hand with 6 fingers. "I believe in following rules that keep me alive," I said. "I believe in respecting things I don't understand, and I believe you should read that journal very carefully before sunset." I handed him my phone number. "I'm staying in Tupper Lake. If you need anything, call me. If something happens and you're scared, call me. I'll help however I can." He took the number, still skeptical, still sure this was all nonsense. I got in my truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, I watched him open the journal again. The sun was starting to set. He had maybe 90 minutes before dark. I hoped he'd take it seriously. I hoped he'd follow the rules. I rented a small cabin on the edge of Tupper Lake. 1 room, basic utilities, month-to-month lease. Close enough to the lodge that I could get there in 20 minutes if needed. Far enough that I could try to build some kind of normal life. I got a job at the local hardware store. Easy work, helping customers find nails and paint. I didn't tell anyone about the lodge, didn't mention what I'd experienced. I was just another newcomer trying to start over. But some nights I'd look toward the mountains, toward where Blackpine Lodge sat in the darkness. I'd wonder if Chris was following the rules, if he'd heard the voices yet, if he understood. My phone rang 3 times in the first month. Chris asking questions, confirming details from the journal. I answered every time, walked him through what I knew, reassured him that the rules worked if you followed them exactly. After that first month, the calls stopped. Either he'd quit and was too embarrassed to tell me, or he'd settled into the routine like I had. I still think about the lodge every day. Every night, actually. I wake at 3:47 a.m. without an alarm. Old habits. I'll lie there in my cabin, eyes closed, counting the seconds until I'd hear that clock chime. I sleep with my door locked. Multiple locks. I check the salt lines on my windowsills weekly even though I'm 12 miles from the lodge. I can't help it. The caution has become part of me. Some people in town ask about the scar on my shoulder. I tell them it was a work accident. They don't push. People in the Adirondacks understand that some stories aren't meant to be shared. I've been in Tupper Lake for 6 months now, long enough to become familiar to the locals. The hardware store owner offered me full-time work with benefits. I accepted. It's not the career I had. It's not saving lives like I used to, but it's honest work and it keeps me close to what matters. Because I've realized something. The lodge isn't just important, it's critical. That thin place, that threshold, it needs to be monitored, maintained. The barrier between our world and whatever's on the other side, it's fragile. It requires constant attention. The rules aren't just about protecting the caretaker. They're about protecting everyone. Every person in Tupper Lake. Every hiker in the Adirondacks. Every family that doesn't know how close they live to something inexplicable. I got a letter from Carol last week. Chris had made it through the winter. He was renewing his contract for another 6 months. She said he asked about me, wanted to thank me for preparing him, said my notes in the journal saved his life during the solstice. I wrote him a letter back, told him I was proud of him, told him he was doing important work, told him I was here if he needed me. Because that's what we do. Those of us who know, we support each other. We maintain the barrier, we follow the rules. We keep the darkness on its side. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand what's at Blackpine Lodge. Maybe it's better that I don't. David was right about that. Some knowledge changes you in ways you can't recover from. But I know this. The lodge stands. The rules remain. And somewhere in the Adirondacks, a caretaker is following protocols that have been refined through decades of trial and error. Protocols written in sacrifice and survival. Chris will leave eventually. Someone else will take his place. That person will add their experiences to the journal. They'll refine the rules further. They'll learn what we learned. And the cycle will continue. It has to. Because the alternative is unthinkable. I sleep better now knowing Chris is there. Knowing someone is maintaining the barrier, keeping the fire burning, following the rules, protecting people who will never know they need protection. Sometimes I drive up to the edge of the property line. I don't go to the lodge itself, but I park on the service road and look toward it through the trees. I can see smoke from the chimney, evidence of occupation, evidence that someone is there doing the work. Last week, I heard someone in the grocery store talking about strange sounds in the forest, voices calling names. Their friend had been hiking near Mirror Lake and heard someone shouting for help. But when they investigated, nobody was there. I didn't say anything. What could I say? That there are things in the woods that mimic human voices, that they're looking for ways to cross over, that only a set of inexplicable rules keeps them at bay. Nobody would believe me. They'd think I was crazy. So I stay quiet. I do my job at the hardware store. I live my simple life in my small cabin, and I keep watch, always watching, always ready. The world is stranger than most people know. There are thin places where the impossible presses close, where things that shouldn't exist reach through the cracks. Blackpine Lodge is one of those places, but it's contained, controlled, managed by caretakers who follow the rules and maintain the barrier. We're not heroes. We don't get recognition or praise. Most people don't even know we exist. But we're necessary. And I take comfort in that. After Tommy Fisher, after Sarah, after all my failures, I finally found something I'm good at. Not saving lives directly, but protecting them indirectly. Maintaining the systems that keep people safe from things they can't even imagine. Tonight, I'll lock my doors, check my salt lines, Set my alarm for 3:47 a.m. just in case. And I'll sleep knowing that 12 miles away, Chris is doing the same thing in a much more dangerous place. The lodge stands, the rules remain, the barrier holds. And we who know, we stand guard in the darkness. Not because we're brave, not because we understand, but because someone has to, because the alternative is letting the darkness spread. I was a paramedic once. I saved individual lives. Now I protect entire communities from threats they'll never see. It's not the career I expected, but it's the one I have. And maybe, in some small way, it's redemption for the lives I couldn't save before. The journal sits on my shelf now. My copy. I made one before I left. Chris has the original, but I have my own version with my notes, my experiences, my warnings for whoever might come after. Because this knowledge needs to be preserved. The rules need to be passed down. Each caretaker builds on what came before, adds their own lessons, protects the next person in line. It's a legacy written in survival, a chain of knowledge spanning decades, and I'm part of that chain now. I work at a remote lodge in the Adirondacks. I don't work there anymore, but I'm still connected to it, still part of its story. There are odd rules to follow at that lodge. Rules that sound insane until you experience what happens when you don't follow them. But the rules work. I'm proof of that. Chris is proof of that. Everyone who survived their time there is proof. We don't fight what's in the forest. We can't. We don't even fully understand what it is. We just maintain the boundary, follow the protocols, keep the fire burning. And we survive. That's all we can do. That's all we've ever been able to do. But it's enough. As long as someone is there, following the rules, the barrier holds. The darkness stays on its side. And people sleep safely in their beds, never knowing how close they came to something that would shatter their understanding of reality. I'm okay with that, with being unknown, with my work going unrecognized. Because I know the truth, and truth doesn't need an audience to be real. The lodge stands, the rules remain, and somewhere in the Adirondacks another caretaker learns what I learned. We're not alone in the world, but we don't have to be afraid. We just have to be vigilant. And we have to follow the rules. Always.